Well, happy holidays, ladies and gentlemen. I am just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Well, the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. Sugar plums are dancing, which is kind of weird, honestly. And we have not one, not two, but 12 high strangeness holiday stories to get you guys in the spirit of the season. So get ready for a dose of ho ho horror with these 12 creepy Christmas accounts. Now, this first case is a visitation from the ghost of Christmas past. Last year, I covered the ghost of Christmas Quilt, but it is too good not to include here in this 12 Scares of Christmas special. In 1957, a woman by the name of Florence Monroe was staying at her mother's house in Poughkeepsie, Wisconsin in the spare room. She was wakened around midnight with the feeling of someone tugging on the blanket. And as she was enveloped not in the blanket, but in this tug of war, she heard a disembodied voice say, "Give me my Christmas quilt." This was just the first antic of the crazy, crazy Christmas quilt, which eventually seemed to be followed by a faceless ghost. In 1956, a retired carriage builder, Alfred G. Hearn, was gathering Christmas. I'm going to be honest with you. One of my accounts says Christmas trees, and the other says Christmas onions. Now, I'm not sure if that means he was just gathering onions like for Christmas, like possibly a Christmas meal or something, or if there is some sort of tradition of Christmas onions. If anyone knows or perhaps has a tradition of Christmas onions, please let me know. Whatever he was gathering it in the woods around Route 28 in Derry, New Hampshire, when he looked up and saw a short being. He claimed that this being stood only about 2 feet tall with green, wrinkled skin that he compared to elephant hide, floppy ears like a bloodhound, and filmed eyes like a snake. He claimed that the being had just 2 holes in its face instead of a nose, stump-like hands, and toeless feet. It was not wearing anything. Now, apparently, it fled when he tried to catch it, making a screeching sound before vanishing. Over 2 weeks, from the 10th to the 24th of December 1981, poltergeist incidents beset the Crown Inn at Trellick, Wales, and it culminated in the most terrifying event of all. Imagine you have your Christmas tree all decorated, the lights are on. I know that is about the scariest part of the holiday season, is putting lights on the tree. And suddenly, it begins to shake violently, eventually nearly bending over. So yes, we have the case of the apparently very frightened Christmas tree. Maybe the Christmas tree was afraid of poltergeists. Who knows? Mrs. Jean Hingley of Rowley Regis, West Midlands, UK, witnessed one of the kitschiest encounters since flying saucer flapjacks, the so-called Mince Pie Martians of January 4th, 1979. Although her complete case warrants a full video, I will mention it here in part. One morning, Ms. Hingley observed a strange object and even stranger beings that floated into her home. These 3 small elf-like winged beings began playing with her Christmas tree. Eventually, Jean claimed a long conversation with them, culminating in her offering them something to drink, they requested water, and some leftover mince pies. Many of the occurrences in the infamous Tallman haunting of Horicon, Wisconsin, perhaps more popularly known as the case of the haunted Bunkbeds, occurred around Christmas time 1987. Their 8-year-old son began waking up to see a strange figure, which he described as almost a 3-foot-tall old woman with glowing eyes, in the corner of his bedroom. He was so scared that his parents let him sleep in the living room with the electric lighted Christmas tree. However, unfortunately, this did not solve his problems. Instead, he claimed that the diminutive entity appeared right next to the Christmas tree. Mrs. Tallman came to check and saw nothing. The young boy claimed that as soon as she left, the strange entity was back, but bigger. At Mrs. Tallman's approach, the being again vanished, and when her son began calling for a 3rd time, she didn't even bother to get up. In Wapaka, Wisconsin, an old Victorian home is host to a very specific Christmas tradition, a phantom dog. Though interestingly enough, I have to mention, phantom black hounds are also said to appear on the Isle of Guernsey in the UK between Christmas and the Epiphany, or Little Christmas. However, back to Wapaka, Steve and LaDonna Nealand, who purchased the home in 1983, added a family room addition to the back of the house. Steve was home alone frosting Christmas cookies and listening to Andy Williams' Christmas music on the radio when suddenly a small, dark shape walked up to him. Thinking it was the family cat, he looked down to say hi, and instead saw an unfamiliar black dog. Just as he realized what he was looking at, it vanished right before his eyes. A year later, again frosting Christmas cookies and again alone, in the back room, The exact same thing happened to Steve. Although this was the last time that Steve saw the little dog, he and the family cat apparently did hear it a few years later. Again, at Christmas time, they heard a little bark from the doorway, but saw nothing. Now, this account seems to have the ghost of Christmas future hitchhiking in the UK, Cranham, Essex to be precise. A man by the name of Richard Sage was driving with three of his friends down St. Mary's Lane on Christmas 1977 when suddenly a monk appeared out of thin air, crossed in front of the vehicle, and vanished. 2 years later, he saw the same entity again at the same place on Christmas, and other witnesses also claimed to spot this phantom on Christmas of 76 and 78. From one of the great classics of high strangeness, Linda Godfrey's Hunting the American Werewolf, we have the account of a woman named Judy Wallerman. Now, a local tradition in the area where she grew up was the lighting of this huge Christmas star on Young Heel near the Kettle Moraine here in Wisconsin. As a girl, Judy liked to look at the star through her telescope, and sometime around 1970, she spotted movement in the shadows cast from the huge holiday decoration. As she followed the movement, it finally came out into the open, and she saw a tall, bipedal, hair-covered being. She spotted it several more times, always when she was looking at the light cast from that giant star decoration, and found several other people in the area who claimed to have spotted it as well. Mattingly Hall in Cambridge has not one, but two ghosts of Christmases long past. The first is said to be the spirit of Ursula Hund, wife of the original builder of the home way back in 1543. On Christmas Eve, she's said to appear in a state of distress, apparently upset that her son had decided to tear down a church and use it for timber. Her friend in holiday cheer or fear is called Old Lady Cotton, a woman in black seen coming up the drive around Christmas time. Pendeen Vow, a fugu or underground chamber on the Cornish coast, is the site of its very own Yuletide spectre. Legends maintain that a lady in white appears at the entrance of the long chamber, holding a red rose in her mouth. Legends also maintain that if you see her, you are cursed to die within the year, or that if you follow her underground, she transforms into a monster, which, no stretch of the imagination, may also make you die very shortly. In the fairy faith in Celtic countries, W.Y. Evans Wentz relates the tales of two farmers from the village of Treviskin in Cornwall. And a really quick, interesting linguistic look, and this is one of those that I really wish I could pin down the proper pronunciation. The name Treviskin means tree or hamlet, and then there are two options for the rest, a corruption of Heskin meaning marsh, or Beskin meaning little short one. Given the following story, I tend to think that it may be the second one. So the first farmer told him that in a neighboring town of St. Just, on a Christmas day, a piskie, more popularly pronounced Pixie, carried a little boy away in his cloak. After an hour, the boy returned only to be taken again, and again he made it back. Wentz believed that they meant he was taken in the sense that he was put into some sort of trance state, so almost his body was still there, but his essence or spirit or consciousness is what was taken. Again, showing a very interesting dissolution between the immaterial and the material senses of that term. And finally, we have a real Star of Wonder. Christmas Eve, 1960, right at midnight, a light appeared above a mountaintop north of Wade Folsom's ranch outside of Durango, Colorado. Wade himself commented that it was like, quote, the Star of Bethlehem. However, this soon turned out to be instead a huge, round, lighted dome underneath which were tiny blinking windows. I can promise you this is one humdinger of a case, but we will have to get into that in next week's episode. Well, if you enjoyed this spooky holiday special, please like, and if you're new to this field of crop circles, go ahead and subscribe to see what weirdness the future may have in store. Till then, you can keep up with me on my free blog at patreon.com/JustAnotherTinFoilHat. Again, I mentioned last week, but this is now where my works cited pages will be in the free blog postings. So you do not need to pay for those. Just go on, you can subscribe to the blog and see all of my resources and works cited for each of the episodes. Anyway, yeah, that's patreon.com/JustAnotherTinFoilHat. And please tune into the podcast Somewhere in the Skies. You know, not only is it the very best anomalous listening, but every Friday it is also the home of audio versions of Just Another Tinfoil Hat. For today, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off, and happy holidays.
Do